The night had draped the city in a thick, velvety darkness as I reluctantly left my friend's apartment. It was one of those evenings that stretched on, long and cold, making the city streets feel eerily deserted. I had always been cautious when walking home alone at night, but tonight, an inexplicable sense of foreboding clung to my every step. As I ventured further from the warmth of my friend's place, the city seemed to swallow me whole. The streetlights cast dim, flickering pools of light on the pavement, but the shadows danced and played tricks on my mind. The chill wind rustled through the trees, a symphony of unease that prickled my skin. I clutched my bag tightly, the strap digging into my shoulder as I picked up the pace. The solitude of the night had never bothered me before, but tonight was different. Tonight, I felt like an intruder in a world that no longer belonged to me. A flicker of movement caught my eye, and I instinctively turned to look. Down the darkened alleyway to my left, I glimpsed a fleeting shadow, something that seemed out of place. My heart thudded in my chest as I strained to see, but whatever it was had vanished into the inky blackness. I told myself it was just a trick of the mind, an overactive imagination, but the sensation of being watched persisted, gnawing at my nerves like a relentless predator. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, pretending to check a message, anything to divert my thoughts from the creeping unease. But as I glanced at the screen, I realized I had no messages, no missed calls. My stomach sank and I felt a pang of vulnerability. The distant echo of footsteps sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't be sure, but it felt like someone was following me. The footsteps were faint, almost imperceptible, but they mirrored my every move, keeping a constant distance. Fear constricted my chest, and I fought to keep my composure. I turned into a narrow, dimly lit alley, hoping to lose my unseen pursuer. But the footsteps followed, always a few paces behind, never getting closer but never falling behind either. My breath quickened as I realized I was trapped in this twisted game of cat and mouse. Panic clawed at the edges of my mind, threatening to consume me. I needed to get out of there, to find help, but my legs felt like lead and my voice was lodged in my throat. I took a sharp left turn, bursting onto a wider street. There, under a flickering streetlight, I saw a figure, a silhouette, tall and looming, hidden beneath a hooded cloak. It stood perfectly still, watching me with an intensity that sent a wave of terror coursing through me. My heart pounded like a drum, and I finally found my voice. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice trembling. No response. The figure remained motionless, a silent sentinel in the night. Desperation pushed me forward, and I started running. The footsteps behind me quickened in response, a sinister echo of my own haste. I needed to reach the safety of my apartment to put an end to this nightmare. As I approached my building, my legs screamed with exhaustion, but I didn't dare look back. I fumbled for my keys, dropped them, and cursed my trembling hands. Finally, I managed to unlock the door and stumbled inside, slamming it shut behind me. I leaned against the door, gasping for breath, my heart pounding in my chest. I watched through the peephole, praying for a glimpse of my pursuer, a clue to their identity. But there was nothing. The street outside was empty, devoid of any figures or shadows. It was as though my pursuer had never existed, a phantom of the night. I reported the incident to the police, but like a recurring nightmare, they found no trace of the mysterious figure. I lived in constant fear, always looking over my shoulder, never truly at ease. The night had become my prison, a realm of lurking shadows and unseen terrors. Walking home alone at night had once been a routine, a simple act of traversing the city streets. Now, it was a descent into darkness, a journey filled with dread and uncertainty. The memory of that silent pursuer haunted me, a reminder that the night could hold horrors beyond imagination, and that some fears were far too real to ever escape. I never thought much about walking home alone at night. After all, I had done it countless times before without a second thought. The city I called home had always been relatively safe, and the dimly lit streets had never posed much of a threat. That was until that fateful night, a night that would forever haunt my dreams. It was a chilly autumn evening, and the clock on my phone read 11:30 p.m. as I left my friend Sarah's apartment. We had spent the evening reminiscing about our college days, and the time had flown by faster than I had anticipated. The streets were quieter than usual, and the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze served as a constant reminder of the approaching winter. I had always found solace in the night, a time when the city seemed to exhale and rest. It was my favorite time to walk, allowing me to clear my mind and enjoy the solitude. But as I strolled down the dimly lit sidewalk, a sense of unease crept over me. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something about the night felt different. I quickened my pace, my footsteps echoing on the empty streets. I tried to brush off my unease as mere paranoia, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. The dim streetlights cast eerie shadows on the pavement, and every distant sound seemed amplified in the silence. As I turned the corner onto a narrower, less traveled street, my heart skipped a beat. A figure stood at the end of the block, shrouded in darkness. I squinted, trying to make out any distinguishing features, but my heart pounded in my chest as I realized they were looking right at me. I hesitated, my footsteps faltering. The figure didn't move, but I could feel their gaze piercing through the night. With a shaky breath, I continued walking, convincing myself that it was just a passerby, perhaps waiting for someone. But the unease lingered, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I reached into my bag and retrieved my phone, pretending to make a call to appear less vulnerable. My trembling fingers dialed my roommate's number, but there was no answer. I curtsied under my breath, realizing that I was truly alone. I walked faster, the rhythmic sound of my heels on the pavement now an anxious drumbeat. Glancing back, I saw the figure still following at a distance. Panic surged through me, and I picked up my pace even more, my heart racing. As I neared my apartment building, I fumbled for my keys in my bag. My fingers were numb with fear, and I struggled to insert the key into the lock. The figure drew closer, their steps echoing ominously behind me. Finally, I managed to unlock the door, and I rushed inside, slamming it shut behind me. I leaned against the door, my chest heaving as I tried to catch my breath. I watched through the peephole, heart in my throat, as the figure stopped outside my building. They seemed to linger for a moment before turning and disappearing into the night. Relieved, I stepped away from the door, my hands still trembling. I told myself it must have been a coincidence, a stranger on the same path as me, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I spent the rest of the night in a state of restless anxiety, the encounter replaying in my mind. I tried to reassure myself that I was safe in my apartment, but the fear gnawed at me like a relentless beast. The next day, I reluctantly left my apartment to go to work, convincing myself that I had overreacted the previous night. But as I stepped outside, my heart sank. A single red rose lay on my doorstep, a chilling reminder of the encounter. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Who was this person, and why had they followed me home? I decided to confide in Sarah, hoping she might have some insight or advice. As I told her the story, her face turned pale, and she hesitated before speaking. "You need to be careful, Emma," she said, her voice trembling. "I've heard stories about a stalker in this neighborhood. They say he follows women home at night and leaves a red rose as a warning." My blood ran cold as the pieces fell into place. The figure I had encountered was not a coincidence, but a predator who had been lurking in the shadows. The rose was a sinister message, a sign that I was not safe. With Sarah's encouragement, I reported the incident to the police, providing them with a description of the man. They assured me they would increase patrols in the area and investigate the matter further. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being constantly watched, of never truly being alone. Weeks passed, and the fear slowly began to ebb away. The police had not found any leads, and I had started taking self-defense classes to regain a sense of control. I refused to let fear dictate my life, but the shadows of that night lingered,